guys, Chris from Layman's Survival Series. I want to talk a little bit about the vehicle EDC. So let's see what we got. Well, I hope you excuse the mess, but there is sort of a method to the madness here, so let's get into it a little bit. First off, here is a sort of a, I guess a survival kit slash first aid kit that I put together specifically for the car. Now this is going to be another video that you'll see, just this in itself, so look for that. But I'll get back to this later. I'll show you what else is in here. I think it's pretty important to have sort of a running toolkit that you can keep specifically for your car, because I can't tell you how many times I've come across either me that needs help, maybe changing a flat tire out or tightening something that I have with me in the car, or something on the car itself, or fixing something in some way. So I put together a kit first that's just for the car and it's just tools, and we'll look inside and see what's in here. Just a fairly cheap ratchet set I bought from Walmart, $15–20, whatever. Doesn't have all the sizes you'll ever need, but it's covers quite a lot, and it's so cheap that you wouldn't really mind if it got stolen. You wouldn't be out that much money. This is a screwdriver set, again $15–20. Also wouldn't mind if it got stolen, and that's kind of the idea behind a lot of this, is that you don't care as much as if it gets stolen or something. That's why you leave it in the car and don't mind leaving it in the car, because you wouldn't be out too much money, and hopefully isn't too valuable to you. That's kind of the overall underlying idea here. But this is really nice because it has tons of shapes and sizes of screwdrivers in here that I've never found a use for a quarter of these, let alone the whole thing. But you have them here if you need to, and you'd be surprised the kind of little odd jobs that you come across that you kind of need a specific size bit for, or specific shape bit, and if you have it with you all the time, all the better. Another thing I feel is super important and has come in handy quite a lot is a decent DC to AC power inverter, and this is a little 400 watt continuous 800 watt peak power inverter from Cobra, and this is good for powering several cell phones if you only have a wall charger, or powering a laptop or two if you need to charge it or use it. Pretty much anything except really heavily powered things like refrigerators or something like that. Something small like this will get you by pretty good. And the nice thing is you can plug them into the cigarette lighter, or it also comes with a cable that lets you alligator clip it right onto your car battery. Now, a word of advice: if you use these too long, too often, and you don't start your car or run your car, you kind of have to be careful how much you run your battery down if you're using it without the car running. So, something to be mindful about. And the next thing is just some odds and ends tools. I like to carry a pair of vice grips in here because they just clamp down on things super hard, a lot harder than you can crimp down with just your bare hands. Also just sort of an adjustable wrench. I like this one in particular because it can go wider open here than a lot of the other ones, at least that I have, and I have a few applications where that really comes in handy, so I like to carry the bigger one rather than the smaller one if I can. One thing I almost forgot when it comes to your vehicle EDC that I think is super important is to have a plug-in tire pump. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Just having a plug-in tire pump. This thing was about $30–40 maybe, because nowadays a lot of times the pumps that you pay for at the gas stations either don't work at all or they don't have one, or if you don't have the money for them, the quarters or whatever, you just do it yourself, or you can do it for somebody else. And oftentimes they come in with a utility light that you can light up your work area when it's dark out. So, and the cords and the hose and everything is usually self-contained inside, so it can pack up real nice and store away. So this is another thing that I think is pretty darn important when it comes to your car. Something else that's not a bad idea is sometimes you find those car accessories, and this thing here is kind of one of those cheapy things you find in the store, but it flashes, I think. Yep. Yeah, it's pretty bright out here, hard to see, but this thing really lights up bright at night. So you can, it's got a magnet on the bottom, extends up. You can stick it to the back of your car or to the hood of your car, and it'll flash, and you can see it for quite a ways off at night. So, and it's that typical triangle, you know, caution shape, so drivers will avoid hitting you at night when they see that. So it's come in handy once in a wreck that I was in several years ago. And then also it has just a regular light, like a utility light on it. So kind of a nifty little thing to have. I like to keep it around. Another thing I like to keep in here is a good pair of work gloves, utility gloves. These are pretty nice and robust. They're leather, and they're good for, you know, if you're doing something abrasive, you don't want to cut your hands up, or if you got to pull limbs out of the road or away from your car so you can get through. I mean, you name it, there's 1,000 uses for something like this, so something really good to keep around. These are a few other tools that I keep around, just another small wrench, so you can do two at once if you need to when you're adjusting things, and a couple of odds and ends tools that are meant for some of the regular hitches that I hook up to the car here, such as, like, you know, the bike rack or a trailer hitch for a small utility trailer. This thing here doesn't look like much, but boy does it come in handy when you're plugging something into that power inverter that I showed you earlier. This thing allows you to plug into the one socket while you have something else plugged into the other, and the sockets are usually really close together, so it's hard to get two things like a wall wart. If you know what a wall wart is, it's those big fat box looking things that you plug in straight into the wall socket for, like, your cell phone or for any kind of a low energy electronic device. These really come in handy for that, where you plug it into the one socket and it hangs way out here, and you can plug your wall wart in right here, and then you can have just a regular plug in on the other socket next to it and not run out of room. Or you can have two of these and run them out and have two wall warts, and they won't be butting into each other, and you can have the room you need to plug more than just the one in. So these things they're cheap, but boy, they are really handy to have when you need them. These are those wires that I was telling you about before for the AC inverter that let you hook them up to your battery terminals, so you can run power that way rather than just your cigarette lighter. This is something that people may not think a whole lot about. It's a converter for if you have a trailer and you have electrical hookup for your trailer in your car. Typically on the small hookups, they got the inline four terminal plugs. Sometimes you may need to hook up a trailer that takes more than just those 4 plugs, so having a having a converter for that is really handy. This one goes from a 4-pin to a 5-pin plug-in, so that allows you to have your backup light if you have backup lights on the trailer, and it'll still work even if you don't use that extra extension. You can still hook it up and have your regular tail lights and turn signals and whatnot. So I don't have a trailer that I need this for, but I may come across one, and these are cheap little adapters, and I think they're worth to have when you really need it. You'll miss it if you don't have it. So that kind of concludes the gear bag of tools for just the car. And in addition to that, I definitely recommend having one of those store-bought emergency roadside kits to have in your car. Now these have everything from the tow straps to your signal flares to first aid kits, jumper cables, flashlights, small tools that you would need in a pinch. Now granted, a lot of the stuff in these are cheap and half the time they really don't work, but there's enough stuff in here that works, that maybe doesn't require electricity or whatever, that I still think it's worth having these. And they're usually really cheap, $15, $20, maybe $30 for a real good one. So I think it's really worth having these rather than not having them, and they're worth their space in your trunk. In the summer months, I like to keep my sun hat around, and this thing is just great for keeping the sun off of your face and most of your neck, and does a lot to keep you cool. So it'll be in my car all the time. I might even keep it during the winter months too. So, and you probably notice if you have videos down the road, you'll probably see me wearing this quite a lot. Some people think it looks nerdy, but hey, it's functional and it works really well, so they can think what they want. One more thing I like to keep in the car is a sleeping bag, and this is just a typical, I don't know, 30-40 degree sleeping bag. That's really nice to use for, well, a sleeping bag if you get stranded, or you can unzip it and use it as a blanket or a floor mat to lay out on. But there's really a lot of uses you can use for these, and man, when you're cold and maybe wet or whatever, it really pays to have something like this around. So I make it a point to keep one of these in the car. And again, it's not one of those expensive $250 ones that are good down to -40 degrees or something. Though if you kept one of those in your car, I wouldn't fault you for it, because especially if you live in the cold climates, you might just need something like that. So, but just a general run-of-the-mill sleeping bag is a good thing to have in the car for those times that you never thought you would need something like that. Something else I keep in the car too is a cheap pair of water shoes. Now, you could use these if for some reason you didn't have shoes on, or something like that. You could put these on in a pinch and still protect the bottoms of your feet if you had to walk anywhere. But also, if you come across rivers or there's floods, high waters, things like that, and you want to keep a good pair of shoes dry for when you're not in the water. Something like this really helps. Like if you have to walk out in the creek or the river. Also, it's kind of better than going barefoot if you're not used to going barefoot, and you step on something that's slightly sharp, and then next thing you know, you have problems and infections. You can avoid a lot of that by just having a pair of these around. Something that's useful anywhere at any time is a good tarp, and I have a bunch of tarps. I don't think you can have enough tarps. I mean, these serve for shelter, for protection against the ground, to cover things up. They're weatherproof. I mean, they're just invaluable, and just to have a utility tarp in your car for just any possible thing you could think of is just absolutely essential, in my opinion. Another thing I like to keep in the car, no matter what time of year it is some warm jackets. And these are just fleeces. Some of these are just from, Columbia jackets. The inner fleece portion of them that, you know, they're too beat up and ragged to wear anymore, but oftentimes the inner fleece is still good. So I like to keep those. And also, while you're at it, keep two, because chances are you may have someone with you, or you might run into someone that needs them, and you never know when it gets too cold at night. Even sometimes summer nights can get fairly cold, and just to take the edge off, they're really worth keeping around. And of course, I have another one. Again, redundancy, right? And the arms look a little funny because they're stuffed with gloves and hats. I also keep these in the car all year round too, because just like the fleeces and the jackets, you never know when you might want or need something like that to protect yourself, keep yourself warm. And I've found that rather than just keeping gloves and hats just laying around in the car, if you stuff them down into the sleeves, it kind of keeps them together and out of the way. So then you can just take them out as you need and use them. Well, here I'll show you. Scarves also. But you can just take them out as you need them and stuff them back in there when you don't need them, and then you have even an extra jacket on top of that once you pull it all out. So I try not to get too carried away with carrying too many gloves and hats and all that stuff. Just sort of enough that seems like it could cover most of the bases. So kind of a nifty little trick I figured out. In addition to the other fleeces and the jackets that you might keep along in your car, if the jackets that you use aren't water resistant or waterproof already, I think it's good to keep some sort of rain jacket or water resistant type of thing to put over those if need be, because it's not always dry if you get stranded or if you need to be out somewhere away from your car. So if you don't have a rain layer to go with your warmth layers, definitely a really good idea to have. Another thing I like to keep in is just a general bed sheet, and this comes in handy for if it's not quite cold enough for the sleeping bag. You can use this to wrap up with. You can also use it to cover things up in your car that your utility cover, if you have one in your car, may not cover, or if you have stuff in your back seat you don't want people to see, just drape one of these over it, and they don't know what's in there except whatever the shape looks like that it's laying over, which most people may not really care about or pay much attention to. So a lot of uses for this, and it's definitely come in handy in times where I never thought anything like this would be needed or whatever, but I figure it's a good piece of gear to keep around anyway. This is something kind of extra that I don't necessarily need to keep in here, but it is kind of nice because in those really hot, muggy summer months where the humidity is like 100 million% and you're just sweating, dying, this is a little personal mister bottle. You just fill it up with water and you pump it, and then you turn the little deal on here, and it shoots out a little mist right on you and on your face. And this is great, especially camping in the like in the summer times when it's just so blisteringly hot. You know, typically if you're with a group or something, you'll have a cooler with ice in it, and you can use the water that melts in there that's already super cool from the ice. Pour some of that into here, and you got some nice cold, ice cold water to blow on you. And really, a tank of this lasts quite a while, I found out. So it's a neat little gadget to have along. Also, the case here is a little bit insulated, that kind of helps to keep the water inside cold. Of course, I did find out using this, depending on what you have inside the cooler, and if you use the cooler water, our water that we used in this before kind of tasted a little bit like pickles and hamburgers. So if you don't mind that, then you're good to go. This last thing I got in here is a trailer hitch that has an antenna mount on it. Now, when I make more videos eventually about ham radio, which I plan to, I'll go more in depth with what this is and how it works, but I like to keep it in here, so I thought I would just point that out. Also, having one of these little trays, just a utility tray for your car or by your door or whatever, is pretty handy too, I think, because if you have muddy shoes or boots and you don't want to dirty your car up too bad, you can take them off and just set them in here and not worry about it, and they can dry and leak mud all over the place and you don't really have to worry. So the last couple small things that I think is a great idea to keep in your car is a car charger for whatever kind of cell phone you have. You know, some people think, well, I'll just charge it at home and I don't really need this. I mean, maybe they don't. Maybe people are pretty switched on now, but if I didn't have this, I wouldn't have a cell phone half the time, because I'm out and sometimes I don't know when I'm going to get back home or where I'm going to end up being. So I got to rely on charging the phone in the car to keep the phone going. So I absolutely think it's necessary to have one of these in your car for whatever kind of phone you have. Also, just a little case to keep spare change in. Not a whole lot in here right now, but it comes in handy for parking meters, or if you want to get exact change for something you're buying on the fly or washing your car, things like that. Just nice and handy to have. Then if you're anything like me, I know this is all about survival, but in all honesty, I probably wouldn't survive if I didn't have my iPod, because I just love podcasts and music too. So having a way to charge your iPod on the go, and this again of course is when your power inverter will come in handy. To be able to charge your iPod wherever you are, no matter what, is for me an essential. Probably the most important thing is carrying water with you. Now, I've used this bottle for years, and I fill it up multiple times a day, every day for years, and I could not leave home without water. I just need water, and I think it's imperative for anybody to take water with them no matter where they're going, even if it's just to the grocery store and right back, because you just never know, and you might as well do it. You owe it to yourself to have clean water with you that you can drink and not have to worry about, you know, trying to find water if you don't have to. Water that you can drink and not get sick, that is. So absolutely essential to take with you. I leave home with this every single day, no matter what, no matter where I go, and no matter for how long. And finally, when driving, it's really important to protect your eyes, I think. So it's super important to have just a good pair of sunglasses on. So I think it's really important for people. That's something that a lot of people don't think about. They just go out and, you know, they don't stare into the sun, I guess, but they don't give much thought to their eyes and their eye health. And whenever possible, I think it's super important, especially when you're driving, to just get those UV rays protected away from your eyes. It's surprising how much light reflects off of other cars and surrounding things that get into your eyes and off your windshield. So I think it's super important to have a pair of sunglasses, and I definitely always do, and just keep them right in the car with me, you know, whether they're prescription or not. So that kind of wraps up the vehicle EDC. It seems like a lot of stuff, but really it packs down into fairly small spaces, and I still have plenty of cargo room in the car for most things. Every once in a while maybe you have to discard one thing or the other to fit something, but overall I think it's super important to have a lot of the things, if not all the things that I've gone over today, in your car at all times. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.